After a summer of tracking trends, spotting sleepers, and watching for a few under-the-radar books to come to life, I'm excited to share my top 10 comics of summer 2024. These are books that caught my eye, stood out in the shifting market, and now, just as we're settling into fall, a few surprises have emerged that I can't wait to unpack with you. So grab a seat and let's dive into the big top 10 comics list for this season. I think a few of these might surprise you. Let's kick things off with a Silver Age DC key that has corrected back down to its 2019 and 2020 prices, despite being the first appearance for the big bad of one of DC's most prominent heroes. The number 10 book is Green Lantern number 7. Hitting the stands back in May 1961, this issue sports the first appearance of Green Lantern's arch-nemesis Sinestro. At this point, despite still doing some pretty evil stuff like taking over an entire planet, Sinestro was still a Green Lantern himself, and it wouldn't be until his next appearance in Green Lantern 9 where we first see the yellow power ring and battery. This book caught my attention coming out of the late summer months, as GPA is just a sea of red for the issue. CGC 7.0 copies are not far away from flirting with 3-digit price tags, with the most recent sale coming in at just $1,057 back in October 2024. The 12-month average in grade is just $1,266, with that most recent sale underperforming by more than 16% compared to the 12-month average. Back in 2022, copies averaged a price of $2,033, which would fall to $1,465 for 2023's average sales price. Now, if 1K isn't in the cards for you right now, you can get a big discount on Green Lantern 7 by just dropping down a half a grade. The most recent sale of a CGC 6.5 was just $504 in August 2024, while a CGC 6.0 sold for $526 on October 2nd. This seems like a bit of an overcorrection to me, but maybe society as a whole has just written off Green Lantern after that really ungood 2011 movie with Ryan Reynolds. Up next, we've got a Silver Age classic that features the first meeting between the two teams that Disney is hoping will carry the MCU franchise into the future. The number 9 book is Fantastic Four number 28. Cover dated July 1964, FF28 was released between X-Men 5 and 6, and while it was an early crossover for the X-Men, it wasn't their first. That designation belongs to January 1964's Tales of Suspense number 49. In classic Marvel fashion, the two teams were pitted against each other by a villain. In this case, it was the Mad Thinker, who was making just his second appearance. Luckily for all of us, though, the awesome android wasn't far behind, because it's just not a Mad Thinker appearance without the android. It will not surprise you that the creative team behind this issue, as per usual, consisted of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Following a steady decline in values coming off of the sugar high of the lockdown era, FF28 is beginning to show signs of life once again, with most grades showing increases in the most recent 90 days. Even with taking these recent bumps in price into consideration, this is still a fairly affordable book. In fact, if you had a ceiling of $1,000, that would put a CGC 9.0 copy in play right now, as the last sale in grade went for $1,020 back in August. This is a slight increase for a book that's averaging just $952 across 3 sales in the last 12 months, and a 2023 average of $1,600. Now, if your budget isn't quite that robust, then you don't have to sacrifice that much grade-wise to cut the price by more than half. CGC 7.0s have a 90-day average sales price of $413, and the most recent sale in September was for just $325. So, if you're looking to lean into the X-Men and Fantastic Four coming into the MCU, this might be one to take a look at. Who doesn't love a good old-fashioned tryout or a prototype issue? Pre-Hero Atlas comic books are full of them, but I have to admit, I'm not familiar with many of them on the DC side of things. So when I came across a copy of the number 8 book in a collection buy a while back, I was pleasantly surprised to find a Supergirl prototype in Superman 123. We're all pretty familiar with May 1959's Action Comics 252, which is the first official appearance of Kara Zor-El, otherwise known as Supergirl. But 9 months prior to Action 252, Superman 123 introduced the Girl of Steel, which was DC's first Supergirl. The August 1958 issue's cover story was courtesy of Jimmy Olsen, who was granted 3 wishes, with one of them being for a Supergirl with the same powers as Superman to be his companion. Sorry, Lois. Sadly, this magically created Supergirl feels like she is always in the way, and she actually winds up sacrificing herself to save Superman in the issue. Bummer. Though the tryout seemed to work, as we did get an official Supergirl in pretty short order, so it wasn't a complete loss. The creative forces behind this story were writer Otto Binder and artist Dick Sprang, while Kurt Swan provided the cover art. Sales have been fairly light for Superman 123, with only 8 sales of CGC graded copies reporting in the most recent 90 days. On the high end, 2 CGC 6.0s have sold with an average sales price of $840, and the most recent sale of only $690, while CGC 3.5 copies have been the most popular with a total of 3 sales in the most recent 90 days for an average price of $243. The most recent sale back in October was for $315. Though, as a mid to late 50s DC book, the values for this one jump pretty quickly and substantially above 6.0, so be ready for that if you decide to go after a copy of Superman 123. The number 7 book got really hot when a movie announcement came out regarding the character that makes their first appearance inside it. Then the movie came out and was generally considered to be trash, which has made Amazing Spider-Man 101 a much more affordable book recently. Cover dated October 1971, ASM 101 is quite a collectible book for a number of reasons. First and foremost, it's the first appearance of Morbius the Living Vampire. It's also the first full issue of Amazing Spider-Man, following the title character's growth of 4 additional arms, which happened at the end of ASM 100. And finally, it's an important issue in the fight against the Comics Code Authority, as it pushes back against a number of CCA regulations that had been major no-nos for over 15 years at that point. You had a vampire with a ghoulish appearance, a creepy full moon on the cover, and a side dish of body horror in the form of Spidey's additional arms. This thing feels more like 1953 than 1971. The issue was in great hands creatively though, as Roy Thomas handled the script and Gil Kane was on the cover and interior pencils. While the movie didn't do this book any favors, that, coupled with the deflating of the comic book bubble, has brought prices way down over the last couple of years. In fact, generally speaking, ASM 101 has reverted back to 2018 or 2019 prices. There's no shortage of copies of this book either, and the volume of sales in the last 90 days supports that. With 86 sales of CGC graded copies reporting, collectors are definitely taking advantage of these lower prices. CGC 7.0 copies saw the highest number of sales, with a total of 14 reporting for an average sales price of $343. Now, the last sale back in October was just a few dollars shy of that at $331. For perspective, the 2022 average price in grade was $781 across 51 sales. The price ramps up fairly quickly though, as the CGC 8.5 has 4 sales reporting for an average 90-day sale price of $757, though the last sale was only $630. But by the time you hit 9.0, you're into the realm of the 4-figure price tag. Up next is one of the Bronze Age's biggest books, but it caught my eye this summer as it's in a bit of a dip at the moment. If you grew up in the 70s or 80s, then there was no way that you missed out on Scooby-Doo. But when the number 6 book, Scooby-Doo number 1, came out, it must have flown under the radar because these things aren't as common as you might think. Cover dated March 1970, Scooby-Doo 1 hit the stands not long after the cartoon debuted back in September of 1969. As you might expect, this issue is the first comic book appearance of Scooby-Doo, Shaggy, Fred, Velma, and Daphne. The total CGC census for this issue is just 506 copies, which is quite low for a book of this age, especially given the value this issue has achieved in recent years. What's more is the top of the census is held by 2 9.4 copies. There are a grand total of 13 copies graded 9.0 and above, which is part of the reason why prices spike so much for this book above 7.0. It's not a particularly easy book to find in general, and copies above fine grades are especially few and far between. We max out around the 5.0 mark, sticking to a roughly $1,000 price point, but there is a bit of price compression between 5.0 and 6.0, as the most recent sale in 5.0 is $1,080, while for the 6.0, it's just $23 more at $1,103. The CGC 3.5 has fallen below $500 with a most recent sales price of $450. This is what really caught my eye, as in recent years, Scooby-Doo 1 had a fairly hard floor at $500, and if you were able to find a copy at that price, it was going to be a 2.0 or lower. All that said, if this is a book that you've given up on, it might be a good time to give it another look. Kicking off the top half of the list, we find a book that is catching its second wind following the announcement that Dr. Doom is going to be joining the MCU. The number 5 book is Marvel Superheroes number 20. Now, what makes Marvel Superheroes 20 special is its iconic Larry Lieber cover. And let's be honest, no disrespect to Larry, but that's not a statement we get to make very often. Lieber also gets a writing and interior art credit for the Doom cover story, along with writer Roy Thomas and Frank Giacoia. If you're curious where this Doom story falls chronologically, Doom's preceding appearance was in Strange Tales 167, and his next appearance after this issue was in Fantastic Four number 84. With one of the better Silver Age Doom covers, particularly ones that remain affordable for most collectors, Marvel Superheroes 20 is surprisingly affordable all the way up into VF condition. And remember, this is a square-bound issue. The current 90-day average sales price for a CGC 8.0 copy is $547, though the last sale was a strong one at $685. Since this issue is a square-bound book from 1969, the value shoots up pretty quickly beyond 8.0. By the time you hit 9.0, you're looking at a 1K plus price tag. On the lower end, you can get into a CGC 4.0 right now for $200. Personally, I really like this book because it's accessible for most collectors, almost regardless of your budget. So if you're looking for that old school Dr. Doom book to add to your collection, this one might be a contender. Halloween may be over, but Pre-Code Horror never goes out of season. The number 4 book is one that I've had my eye on for a while, and I have a feeling that it may be one of the next EC books to heat up. Let's talk about Crime Suspense Stories number 17. Cover dated June-July 1953, this issue is from the peak of the pre-code era. From this point on, visiting the newsstand every month would have been quite the sight, as artists like Johnny Craig, who is the cover artist for this particular issue, Lee Elias, Jack Davis, and many others continually tried to outdo one another. Well, at least until the United States Senate poo-pooed on the whole damn thing. Crime Suspense 17 is not the first issue that comes up when you think about the Crime Suspense Stories series. Issue 22 is hands down the king of the mountain here, but as it's priced out a large number of collectors, they've begun looking for consolation prizes within the title. Quick to fill that gap is Crime Suspense Stories 20 with another classic Johnny Craig cover, this one featuring a pretty gnarly broken neck hanging cover. But like issue 22, CSS 20 has also become price prohibitive as well. With a $1,000 budget, you're barely able to haul in a CGC 2.0 copy right now. So checking down from there, we find Crime Suspense Stories 17. It's a fairly disturbing gunshot cover, which is starting to pick up some steam. Now, it's fairly early, but these things do tend to start slow and then snowball very quickly if they do in fact take off. Looking at recent sales, there was a strong Gaines file copy sale for a 9.6 copy in September for $12,000. September also brought a great deal for a CGC 6.0 for just $906, but 3 weeks later, another 6.0 sold for $1,200. A CGC 3.0 also sold in September for $800, which is a very strong sale for a grade that has a 12-month average sales price of $581. Long story short, a $1,000 budget is likely to max out around a CGC 4.0 or a 4.5 in the current market, though with a little bit of luck and the fact that we're now on the backside of spooky season, you might be able to do a little bit better. As much as it pains me to add this one to the list, it has to be done. The number 3 book, and one of my biggest personal fumbles, is Marvel Spotlight number 5, the first appearance of Johnny Blaze as Ghost Rider. With a classic Mike Ploog cover, Ploog would be paired up with writers Gary Frederick and Roy Thomas, a couple of small-town Missouri boys, to bring the Ghost Rider story to life. Cover dated August 1972, Ghost Rider picked up where Werewolf by Night left off in the Marvel superhero title, as Jack Russell's Werewolf proved successful enough to get his own title beginning in September 1972. Ghost Rider would continue as the lead in Marvel Spotlight through issue 11, when, like Werewolf by Night, the character was given their own series in September 1973. For Ghost Rider fans who missed the boat on this issue before values went all kinds of stupid back in 2021, I have some good news. We're starting to see prices that are moving back in line with the long-term trend line prior to the comic boom. The 2020 average sales price for a CGC 6.0 copy of Marvel Spotlight was $702 across 22 sales, with a high sale of $901. Here in 2024, we've recovered from boom prices and have seen an average sales price of $1,055, also across 22 sales year to date, with a high sale of $1,545. Now, 9 of these 22 sales have been for under $1,000, with a 2024 low sale of $870. While there have been plenty of 4-figure sales this year, with a little patience and a $1,000 budget, I'm pretty confident that a CGC 6.0 should be in play for you. Looking at what you can expect with a roughly $500 budget, though, it does get a little more complicated. There's a bit of price compression below the 4.0 grade. The most recent sales in 2.0, 2.5, and 3.5 are $500, $454, and $475 respectively, with all of those sales taking place in September 2024. The CGC 3.0 throws a bit of a wrench in the works, though, with a pair of seemingly strong October sales for $700 and $610. The moral of the story: if your budget for this book is closer to the $500 mark, you're probably going to be better off tracking down a raw copy in the VG range over buying graded for the same money. In the runner-up spot, we're going all the way back to the Golden Age for an early cover appearance of one of Batman's oldest foes. The number 2 book is Detective Comics number 99. Cover dated May 1954, this is just the 3rd cover appearance of the Penguin following Detective Comics 67 and Batman 14. And apparently by the 3rd cover appearance, all the excitement wears off, because this one is much more affordable than the previous 2 cover appearances. My favorite thing about this book is that it's one of the big logo Detective Comics issues. For a detective, this logo style ran through issue 113 before DC rebranded their entire line with smaller logo designs that would run all the way into the late 1950s. The Penguin show on Max has been pretty well received, and while I haven't had an opportunity to check it out yet, I'm looking forward to watching it due to the strong word of mouth that it's had. DC legend Dick Sprang provided this typically kooky Golden Age cover, as well as drawing the Batman story inside, which was written by Don Cameron. While this book isn't necessarily a key in the truest sense of the term, in today's hobby, there seems to be a decent argument to be made for Golden Age cover appearances of Batman's primary Rogues Gallery members. And let's be honest, outside of the Joker, Catwoman, and the Penguin, most of these villains have a limited number of appearances overall in the Golden Age, never mind cover appearances. As with most Golden Age books, comps are few and far between, and that's true with Tech 99 as well. There's a single CGC sale reporting in the last 90 days. It's in the 7.5 grade. This sale is from back on September 29th, and the book sold on Heritage for $1,320. A CGC 6.0 sold in March 2024 for $767, while in the same month a Raw 5.0 also sold for Heritage for $660. I love these things, but I've got to warn you, Golden Age can be a very deep, dark hole to begin down. You've been warned. Things were looking bleak for our number 1 book when I first put this list together over a month ago now. In the meantime, things have gone from bad to worse for this issue, But that's likely just going to make it an even better time to check out Tomb of Dracula number 10. Cover dated for July 1973, TOD 10 is the first appearance of Blade the Vampire Hunter, and while all of the issues the MCU is having with the new movie are a bit of a bummer for them, it's great for comic collectors who have been hoping to add this book to their collection. At the time, there wasn't a regular cover artist for Tomb of Dracula. It appears to have just been an assignment that got passed around the bullpen. Lucky for us though, when issue 10 rolled around, it landed on the drawing table of Gil Kane for the story, which was titled His Name is Blade. The creative team consisted of writer Marv Wolfman and artist Gene Colan. Looking at recent sales, it's a sea of red. In fact, there's only a single grade that has shown any increase in value in the 90-day or 12-month average sales price, and that is the CGC 2.5 grade, which had a random strong sale earlier this month for $424 on a $384 12-month average. CGC 8.0s are beginning to dip back into three-figure price points, with two of the most recent three sales coming in under $1,000. Another note on the 8.0 is both of these sub $1,000 sales happened weeks before Disney dropped the upcoming Blade movie from its release schedule. If your budget's more in the $500 range, then you'll be happy to know that CGC 5.0 copies are also trending downward, with several sales in the $550 range as of September, and a 5-year low in grade set at $432 on September 17th. All in all, Tomb of Dracula 10 has corrected back to its 2019 or early 2020 prices. If that's good enough for you, then it may be time to look at adding this one to your collection in the near future, or you can give it a little time and see if you can get an even better deal. Man, this one really got away from me. October wound up being insane, and while I was gone for 3 of the 4 weekends, it was a fruitful month. I managed to pick up a great new collection, and I was able to attend not only one of my favorite comic shows, but also my favorite toy show of the year as well, with the October Kane County Toy Show up in Chicago. While it was fun, and I got some footage from both of those shows, starting out the month in Oklahoma City and then ending it in Chicago, it didn't leave me much time for making videos. I apologize for that. Coming up, we've got the fall top 10s, a new back in the day top 10 countdown for November. Unfortunately, I had to punt on October, so don't hold that one against me. And then I'll dive into the collection and the shows that kept me away from the channel last month. I hope everybody's having a great start to their fall. I just wrapped up my 3rd year of 31 days of Halloween over on Instagram, sharing a new Halloween or spooky season themed book each day, which is always a great time. Thank you everybody for your patience with the content. We're gonna get back up and rolling here, and we'll be back to normal before you know it. Collect responsibly, and I'll see you in the next video.